He was a respected trial attorney, tried over 1,000 cases. He argued cases before the courts of appeal, California Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court. I knew him as an honest, hardworking man of integrity. Well, the family says I need to narrow this down, so I picked 2 or 3 of Dad's most memorable qualities to talk about. His compassion and his dedication to helping other people, his legendary sense of humor, and his lifelong devotion and love affair with Mom. As far as his dedication to helping other people and compassion, it's the one thing I think that I remember most and that I've always tried to emulate and I've tried to pass along to my children. Dad was a very religious man, and for the past 50 years was a devoted member of All Saints Church. We talked about religion. I was not as religious as he was, but I thought the prayer of St. Francis was my religion. We went over the prayer, and we discussed the message, and I think he thought it was a pretty good place to start. I'm not going to recite the whole prayer, but essentially it says, Lord, let me be an instrument of your peace. And when you go out into the world, if you find hatred, try to bring love. If you find sorrow, try to bring joy. If you find suffering, try to bring comfort. Essentially, the prayer says, look, folks, there's a lot of people out there that need a helping hand. So be a helper. Dad was a helper. In the course of his lifetime, if you look at his obituary, you'll see that from a very early age, he was a volunteer, he was a participator, he was the president of the JCs, he was the Commodore of the 4th of July Yacht Club, served on the California Commission on Criminal Justice. He was a very active member of his church. Mom and Dad also were quiet supporters of various charitable organizations. As long as I can remember, Mom and Dad would load up a car and drive down to Mexico, where they supported a children's orphanage. They were enthusiastic supporters of Interval House, a wonderful collection of people that provide shelter for battered women, and an association that I've had for many, many years. And they were also religious and loyal tithers at All Saints Church. On a more personal level, Dad was always there for people. He was always a guy you could count on. He was somebody that countless friends and relatives and neighbors would turn to in their times of crisis. He was always there with words of advice, words of wisdom, and maybe a shoulder to cry on. I remember a small example from when I was quite young. I was about 8 years old. We were leaving a USC game. And we were passing through a park, and there were a lot of people around. And there was one man who well dressed and just looked a little bit out of place. This is just what I recall. I'm sure my family will correct me maybe anytime. But what I remember was that he went to this man, and all of a sudden he was giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
Excuse me, you need to speak into the microphone.
Okay, sorry. So there was this man, as he would start his story. And he went to this man and he gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And I think as a kid I was told, oh, they took him to the hospital and he'll be fine. But what actually happened was the man eventually died. And later I remember that we got a letter from this man's widow. And it was thanking my father because he had taken the time to get his address and write to this man's widow and say to her, look, I just wanted to let you know that your husband didn't die by himself. He was surrounded by people of goodwill, by people that cared about him, that were trying to save his life, and I wanted you to know that. And she wrote to thank him and say that it really meant a lot to her. And that was just very emblematic of the way my dad was, just doing these little things. He also ended every grace with the words, keep us ever mindful of the needs of others. And I thought that coming from him, it was particularly heartfelt. He also had a wonderful sense of humor, as you all know, and as you heard about today at the service. He was a great storyteller. His jokes ranged from hilarious to unbearably corny. He had a quick wit and a touch of sarcasm, which is perhaps an understatement. I regret that I did not appreciate fully his humor when I was young and stupid. I remember when I was at Long Beach State, and I was going to transfer to another school on maybe a debate scholarship. And I told him I wanted to go to UC Santa Barbara and stay with my friends in an apartment on the beach. And he said, you should go to USC. They have one of the best debate teams in the country. Well, that year, Santa Barbara beat USC in the finals of the national championships, and I found myself on a beach in Santa Barbara. And I took my first classes, and I did very well. I got 3 A's, a B+, and a pass. And the pass was in art history, this little class that you had to take. So I took it pass, not pass. So I sent my grades, and I get a letter back from him. It says, congratulations, you should do very well up there so long as any class that requires a modicum of intelligence you take pass, not task. I found no humor in it, so I wrote the letter to him saying, this is the average grade in each of these classes. This is my grade in each of these classes. Perhaps you should be bragging to your friends about your brilliant son. And I got a letter back from him. It was written in verse. And he said, from a snap course school by the sea, defensive letters are written to me, explaining how tough is history and stuff, where even the jocks get a B. My letter was not meant to rile, for with every phone number I dial, I tell of my son, the wondrous one, and that I'm the queen of the Nile. I did not appreciate the humor of that until many years later. There's one other. Dad loved a good joke, but there were certain sacred cows that were off limits. And I told him a joke. We were at a party. Wasn't a joke. And there were these linguistic students from Notre Dame, the hated rival. And they went to an island where they found these natives that didn't speak English. And so they took their smartest student and they took the smartest native, and they put them together, and pretty soon they were able to converse. And one of the students said, do you have any swear words in your language? You're all so polite. You ever rude? I said, sure, we have words like that. And I'm toning this down for this crowd, but the student said, well, how do you call somebody a jerk? And the native said, oh, that's easy. It's just one syllable, da. He says, okay, well, so if you say, hey, there's 2 jerks over there, you pluralize it? He says, no, you just say da, da. Well, that's a little unwieldy. What if you have hundreds of jerks? He says, that's easy. That's da 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 da. So Dad, not the end of the story. It's not the end of the story. There's never an end of the story. So Dad's deadpan. He looks at me and he says, no humor to that. That's not funny. And then he leaves. And a few minutes later, I see him over in the corner, and he's got a bunch of people around him. And I can tell that he's telling a story, but I can't tell what the story is. And he's going along, and everybody's listening to him. He's very animated. And then I hear the punchline. Da 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 da. Notre Dame quite something. It was a very funny guy. My last and certainly not least memory that I want to share is of the 53-year love affair that Dad had with me. Throughout their life together, we saw a relationship that was filled with romance excitement, thoughtfulness, poetry, surprises, and probably a million I love yous. They held hands. They kissed goodbye. They kissed goodnight. Mom was Dad's biggest fan, and her number one goal in life was to make sure that he had everything he needed every time he needed it, and to support him in every decision he ever made. Dad, in turn, loved Mom beyond measure and went out of his way to show it. He was constantly giving her little notes, poems, cards, surprise gifts, enough jewelry to stock a jewelry store, and planning adventures. They had adventures to Catalina and to Mexico and Scotland and Naples, and they brought all their friends with them. They had so many little endearments. One time they were living at the river beach, and their house looked out over the San Gabriel River. And on the other side was a road, and Dad took that road to get to work. He had to go over the bridge and then cross that road. So I was over there in the morning. Dad leaves for work, and I'm talking with Mom. And all of a sudden she says, "Oh, oh, oh!" And she runs upstairs. And I go, "What in the world's going on?" I follow her upstairs. And she goes out on the balcony, and we look across the way, and there's Dad's car driving past. He honks twice, throws her a big kiss, and she throws him. And that's their daily ritual, and that was after they'd been married for only 40 years. At Mom's 80th birthday, I read a poem that was written by my daughter Noelle about love. And the reason I read it was I thought it just captured the way Mom and Dad felt about it. And that either one of them could have written that poem to the other. And I just, I thought it was appropriate. It still seems appropriate today, and I'll leave you with this. Some people say that love is not enough to calm the swelling tides over the years. They're sure that the sea is much too rough, so many troubles, it won't matter who is near. I'm sure that they have never known the unparalleled joy that I feel now. With every year, my love has only grown. I've learned to love. You taught me how. I found solace in your strength. I found comfort in your arms, in your giving heart and spirit, in your wit, your laugh, your charm. Today I love you more than I ever have before. And this love, I feel, is sure to last forever. People wonder when love dies, and this leaves me quite surprised. For the answer, my heart knows, is never.